preseason beginning, there are some things that we need to keep an eye on. Now, I don't want to overemphasize preseason. For the most part, it's a lot to do about very little. And we overanalyze and nitpick and all of these things. And for the most part, the actual games themselves really don't carry too much value as far as what it's going to mean for the regular season. And sure, yes, there's names that break out of nowhere like a Victor Cruz and become very legitimate fantasy assets. But for the most part, it's a lot to do about nothing. But what is significant is trying to see, when do these guys play? With what groups do they play with? How early are they getting playing time? How quickly are they getting pulled? Do they even play at all? Who's playing ahead of them? Those types of things are the things that are more significant than the actual numbers at the end of the game and how well players perform. So here's some things that I'm keeping an eye on from a depth chart perspective and a preseason perspective that could radically change things for your dynasty fantasy football leagues. Let's start off with the biggest news so far. RJ Harvey, 5th on the depth chart. That's noise. That is absolute noise. This is a Sean Payton tactic. And look, I'm not even the biggest RJ Harvey guy in the world, but if this has you panicked in the least, you don't deserve to have good players on your team. This guy is a 2nd round pick. He is not the 5th string guy. The only player of note on this team that is any real concern for RJ Harvey is J.K. Dobbins. J.K. Dobbins will probably be very, very limited if playing at all in the preseason. So we will see RJ Harvey some. And my guess is by the regular season, he'll move up to 3rd or 2nd on the depth chart. But realistically, he's the other back in this equation. Now, I still think J.K. Dobbins is the better long-term play for this season. But obviously, after this year, he has a very good chance in RJ Harvey to be the best fantasy asset at running back on this team. We've got some Travis Hunter news. Travis Hunter has been listed with the 1st team at wide receiver while being listed with the 2nd team at cornerback. This is very, very good news for fantasy football owners. This means they view him more as a wide receiver than they do a corner, which is kind of what we were expecting. But there was some rumblings about how much work he was getting on the defensive side of the football. It looks like he's really turned a corner offensively, and that's going to be his main focus. But I am still watching these preseason games. I want to see how often are they putting him out there on defense, and is it going to affect his ability to be able to perform on offense from a load management standpoint. I get it. Some people in the comments will say he's a unicorn. He's the only guy that's done it. He's different. Well, it's always difficult to really be able to truly trust outliers. And that's why the other side of the community has the hardest time with this and figuring out exactly how to value him. He is definitely a boom or bust player for this year and long term. He could be one of the best receivers in the league, or it could turn out that he's better on the defensive side of the football, or maybe this Jags offense just isn't all it's cracked up to be. We're going to have to wait and see. But so far, good news for fantasy football on Travis Hunter. Kaleb Johnson right now is listed with the 3rd team, but many beat reporters are saying that they would not be surprised if he's the leader in carries sooner rather than later. Right now, he's behind Kenneth Gainwell, that's 2nd, and 1st Jaylen Warren, but neither one of those guys profile as an early down type of back. That is what you get in a Kaleb Johnson. So I think this is more noise than anything else. But still, we've seen other guys like RJ Harvey listed 5th. So at least it's a more encouraging spot than some other players. I tend to fade the noise on rookies when they are listed low in the depth chart. But I do get more enthused when they're listed higher in the depth chart, because that means coaches are bullish on them and are ready to place them ahead of the veterans. And that's what we have here with Jayden Higgins. Jayden Higgins is already getting the starting nod. Now, this isn't a huge surprise. He was one of the first guys taken in the 2nd round. And so he's going to have an opportunity right away to make an impact for this football team. But it's good to see that they're not playing games. They're elevating him right away. And he is going to be a legitimate asset at wide receiver for this team right now, but also into the future. Dante Thornton is running with the ones and listed as the starting wide receiver, while Jack Bech, the 2nd round pick, is with the 2nd team. Now, part of it is what position they play. Dante Thornton's just holding off guys like Colin Johnson, where Jack Bech is having to go against Trey Tucker, and Trey Tucker reportedly has been amazing so far in camp. So that's holding Jack Bech back a little bit, but that could provide a good buy opportunity. Trey Tucker's been around a while, and we have not seen him do a whole lot at the NFL level. So I don't think it's a long-term situation. I think it's a first few weeks, but we'll slowly get more and more Jack Bech. If you're a believer in him during the draft, this should not hold you back. If anything, this just says more good things about Thornton than it does bad things about Jack Bech. We have an interesting situation with the Jacksonville Jaguars. The running back's getting the or treatment. So right now listed Travis Etienne or Tank Bigsby as the starter. So they're not ready to name the starter. Bashal Tutin's third, but I think both of these guys are going to be heavily involved, which is going to make things a little bit cumbersome for fantasy football. You're not going to really know who the best player is, who's the guy to trust. I'm going to be watching if either guy is playing some during the preseason. If so, how much work are they getting? Is it alternating per game, which is something that we have seen out of some teams where they'll play a guy more in one game, the other guy more the other game. So we're going to have to kind of evaluate that and see. But I am still keeping an eye on Bashal Tutin, a guy that's their guy that they drafted, already third in the depth chart. So I don't think he's totally out of this race just yet. One that's pretty surprising, Gunnar Helm, fell a little bit due to his poor combine at the draft, but it was due mostly to an injury, and I think he's actually a better athlete than a lot of people are giving him credit for. But this late round pick already at the second spot at the tight end position on the depth chart, just behind Chigo Okonkwo. So this is a player that I'm watching very closely. Is he getting to run with the ones and twos? Are we seeing him earlier on in the games and not playing as much late in the games? If so, that's going to indicate that that really truly does mean they see him as a potential rival to a Chigo Okonkwo, as opposed to a distant second that's really just competing with other guys for the third spot. Despite a great camp, and look, I've watched some of the highlights and even some of the inter squad practices and scrimmages, and Adonai Mitchell looks amazing. But despite that, right now on the depth chart, Alec Pierce is still listed as the starter. Now, this is an unofficial depth chart. The coaches really aren't telling us exactly what they think, and this is more social media driven, more so than the actual coaches sitting down and saying, we're going to tell the world exactly how we feel about these guys. That being said, I still think Adonai Mitchell looks like the clearly better asset and the clearly better player compared to an Alec Pierce. And we know what he can do with his skill set and movements and his size. All of that could come together to be a really interesting late round flyer. In Dynasty, super cheap. In Best Ball, he's super cheap. I'm willing to target him in those, and I'm really watching to see what he does during the preseason. A name that we've heard a lot during this training camp buzz, and I cannot wait to see in the preseason, is Kyle Monangai. But currently he's fifth on the depth chart, where a guy like Roschon Johnson is second. But let's not forget, Roschon is not this team's and this coaching staff's guy. They drafted Kyle Monangai despite it being late. So I am curious to see, does Kyle Monangai really remain as the last option, the fourth, fifth guy? Or is he climbing up during the preseason and rivaling a Roschon Johnson to maybe start to steal some carries and become a factor in this offense during the season? A guy that's already getting a little bit of a bump, Cam Skattebo, despite being a fourth-round pick, is already listed at third on the depth chart behind Tyrone Tracy, who's listed as a starter, and then Devin Singletary, who's second. Now, this could end up being a messy situation this year, as I could see all three guys being involved and all three guys getting work. So I'm not necessarily saying any of these players are going to break out, but if there was a long-term asset on this team, I think Cam Skattebo is that guy, and I'm really willing to bank on him, and I like to see that he's already moving up the chart. Despite his injury, I still think good things are ahead. Surprising to see that this guy is still third on the depth chart, and that means third at that specific wide receiver spot, so that means more like fifth or sixth total on the depth chart. But Tory Horton is a guy that is just crushing camp right now for the Seattle Seahawks. I think he's going to be moving up. I'm really hoping we start to see him in the first half of these preseason games and not the second half, indicating that he is already having an upward trajectory, and we're going to be seeing playing with the twos and maybe even the ones very, very soon. Dylan Sampson is already the RB2 listed on the chart for the Cleveland Browns. Now, we know part of this is because Quinshon Judkins has not signed his contract yet with some of the domestic violence things that have held him back. Because of that, right now it's just Jerome Ford that's in the path of a Dylan Sampson. Dylan Sampson was a 4th-round pick, but obviously the Browns had some interest in thinking that he could be a major impact after taking him in the 4th round, despite already taking a running back in the 2nd and this team having many, many holes to fill. So this could be one of those situations very quickly that Dylan Sampson climbs and Jerome Ford becomes his backup. And we see Dylan Sampson season early on before we get Quinshon Judkins back. The Dallas Cowboys team is a mess at running back, and there are so many guys that can contribute. But early on, it seems like one guy is favored a little more above the other. We have Javonte in first, Myles second as the backup, and then Jaydon Blue as a 3rd back. And then we're not getting Phil Maffa until the 5th back. So right now, Blue is the guy that they are elevating a little bit more. Maybe we see him get some passing work early on, and he could be a potential sleeper for a boom player. We're always looking for those running backs that might get more volume, that might get more touches, that might get more opportunity than some of these other guys do. That could be the situation here for a Jaydon Blue. So for a guy that, yeah, maybe he doesn't have the 3-down profile that you would like, he could still be an explosive pass-catching option that could strike gold for fantasy football managers. Speaking of somebody that's moving up, another guy that's 3rd on the depth chart, but you usually don't see that quickly out of 7th rounders. Jacory Croskey-Merritt is reportedly already turning heads in camp. He's already up to 3rd, and right now, there's nobody on this team that we're overly afraid of and really holding back a dynamic rookie. Now, he is a 7th rounder. You can only put so much hope and so much faith in somebody that's that low as far as draft capital. But Brian Robinson was not drafted by this team. Austin Eckler, not drafted by this team. We could see a Jacory Croskey-Merritt really get more involved and potentially be a guy that is one of these late-round takeover players that we all say, why did we not draft this guy sooner? TreVeyon Henderson is looking incredible in camp. We just see touchdown play after touchdown play, big catch after shaking defenders, just amazing things all the way around for a TreVeyon Henderson. He is already listed as the 2nd running back here with Antonio Gibson. But I don't anticipate this being there for long. I think TreVeyon Henderson is going to quickly move up and be the number 1 running back for this team. It's just a matter of time. When you use that high of a draft pick in the 2nd round on a running back, your plans are for him to be the starter sooner rather than later. Last guy of note that I want to report on is Ferguson. That's right. Terrace Ferguson is actually still 4th. Now, once again, he's a rookie, so I'm not going to overly be worried about this, but he's behind Higbee, Parkinson, and Allen. We'll see if he gets some run with the 2s and 3s in camp or if he really is at 4. I'm going to be watching him in preseason to see if he's getting some of those opportunities or if he really is that far behind the 8 ball at this point. All right, guys, let me know what training camp battles, what preseason battles, what things are you looking for in these early preseason games? Who's moving up? Who's moving down for you? And what youngsters, camp battles, preseason hype, what guys are we missing when we're talking about these players?